Hello, this is Michael from Green Bay Botanical Garden, here to talk with you about planting your garden. It's been a while since you've seen me. I'm back and we're outside on this lovely day in our herb garden at Green Bay Botanical Garden, and we're going to be talking about garden planning. So, planting a garden is really important. Much like planning your life, you don't want to go in without a plan, but you often will, and I often end up having to wing it sometimes. Life is chaotic and messy, but you don't want your garden to be, so planning it out first is going to save you some time and effort later on. To start this off, we're going to think about the different considerations when making your garden plan. The first and biggest consideration is your goal. What do you hope to get out of your garden? Are you creating a vegetable garden for yourself? Do you want a flower display bed? Do you want fruits for your entire community and your neighbors and everyone around you? What do you hope to get out of your garden? And one of the most important considerations, besides asking yourself what you hope to get out of it, is making sure that it is fun. You do not want your garden to feel like a chore, so plant things that you're going to enjoy and get use out of and like growing, rather than making it a challenge or something that's not fun. And there are so many different purposes you can have for a garden. You can make it a family activity, it can be something you do alone. There's really, the sky's the limit for what you choose to use your garden for and what you want to get out of it. And there are a lot of different options too. You might choose to go with an organic garden. You might choose to go with a low resource use garden, planting a lot of natives. You might want to create beds for wildlife alongside your garden to help promote some natural habitat. So there are plenty of options, but it bears knowing what you want before you start making a plan, because that will make it easier when you've got an end goal. Our second consideration, besides knowing what you want, is knowing your site. We are here in the herb garden today, and despite the fact that it doesn't look like it, this garden actually gets very hot and very dry during the summer, and our horticulture staff actually have to come out early before the midday heat just to make it bearable to be able to work in this spot. And luckily we have water in the well house that we can use to be able to water this location. But I don't know what your site looks like, and everyone's site's going to look a little bit different, but there's some important considerations you want to think of. The biggest is sunlight. That will really, if you've paid attention to my past slide, you'll know I'm very big about limiting factors, being able to, essentially factors in your environment that control what you can and can't grow, or especially make it harder or easier to grow things. Sunlight is going to be one of the biggest. Is your site sunny or is it more shady? Full sun is defined by plant tags, is usually 6 or more hours of sunlight a day. Part sun or part shade are between about 3 and 6, and shade is 3 or less. So that will help you a little bit when shopping for plants and thinking about your site. You're also going to want to think about water. So does it get very wet in your location? Does it get dry? Are you in a lowland location that might flood and get a bit muddier? Or does your soil dry out really fast? So think about the water in your location. The soil itself is important. Have a feel on that soil and feel if it feels sandy or drier. Know if it drains fast or if it drains slowly. And if you want, you can even get your soil sent into the UW extension to have them actually test the pH levels and the nutrient levels if you really want to get scientific with it. I've never really had to do that. I've usually found just eyeballing it and feeling around works well enough to grow most crops. But if you want to ensure success, that's the way to go. It's also worth thinking about the size of your space and what kind of bed you're planting in. Do you have a large bed? Are you planting directly into the ground? Are you doing raised beds, which are the kind of personal garden I have? Or are you doing tabletop beds? These all give different advantages and disadvantages. Having a raised bed allows you to control the soil media a bit more, what kind of soil composition you have. Tabletop beds can help avoid some of the smaller pests that are just on the ground, but those can also be more time intensive and involve some construction to make too if you don't have that available already. So think a lot about your site before you start planting or even making your plan. because that will help you out a lot in knowing what you want, what you're able to grow. You don't want to try and grow something in your site that you know isn't going to be successful there. And that also comes with planting in the same area between years and getting that experience too. Third is a budget. Not everyone has a budget. Sometimes garden supplies aren't costly enough to really make a dent in your spending money, but they can be for some people. And if they are, do a little online research or walking around a store to kind of plan that out. Think about things that you're going to need, like seeds. Usually aren't too costly, but organic can really add up if you're getting a lot of seeds, or transplant plants can definitely add up too. If you need any tools or supplies like fertilizers, stakes, twine, make sure that you get the things that, make sure that you estimate cost if cost is going to be a factor for you. And finally, getting to the garden plan. So creating a plan can be a lot of fun. I like doing it. And for me, that means taking pencil or colored pencils to paper and being able to draw that out. I'm sure there are computer programs you can use, but I'm not tech savvy enough to know any of them offhand. If you have a tech savvy gardener friend, you can ask them, but I usually just use pencil, paper, and a ruler. That usually starts with going out to my garden site and measuring out the space I have, finding out the dimensions of the area that you plan to plant in and how big they are. Then you can take that to the paper and draw it to scale. Essentially, that might mean 10 feet. Measuring a bed is 10 feet by 5 feet, and for every 5 feet in real life, we're going to represent that as 1 inch on the paper. And that makes it really useful, because then you actually know where your plants are going to be, and you can space them out in the rows in paper. Right on your paper, when you go out to your garden, you'll be able to know exactly where that is. And I find a really helpful tip for me is tagging that as you measure it out, if you have a good idea of what you want your row spacing to be. And a garden plan, like I said, is a lot of fun. There's a lot you can do with it. You can include a lot of your site information too. Perhaps you have a sunnier spot. You can draw that as maybe a lighter area on your garden plan. And you can draw shadier spots. You can draw objects if they might be shading. If they're not, I usually don't worry about them too much. How close you are to roads and things like that. There are all sorts of things you can include on it, but have fun with it and feel free to get really artistic too. A lot of the fun for me is drawing fun symbols. I always draw a legend, essentially a key for different shapes of things I might plant, like flowers or vegetables, and then I denote each row with that icon so I know, hey, I'm planting these here. Be sure to pay attention when you are creating rows, if you're doing that instead of just broadcasting, how far apart they are, because that will help you later on when you're shopping for your supplies and knowing about how many seeds you're going to need and keeping your garden well maintained and organized. When you're thinking about planting, be sure to plant along with the land rather than against it. You want to have rows that are going horizontally on an angled slope rather than vertically straight up it, because that helps catch a lot more of the water and be a lot less wasteful. Think about too, if you're going to be planting throughout the season different things, some of your flowers or vegetables might come up early and then be done, and you might want to plant something else in there. So if you really want, you can photocopy your garden plan once you've made the blank version and then draw 2 different versions, early season and late. Or you could just write in one row, tomatoes here, by the end of the season we're going to put something different in. So you can really make it how you want and customize and create it a lot of the way that makes the most sense to you. I just strongly recommend keeping your garden plan clean, neat, and organized. You don't want to have to get to your site, pull out your garden plan and be like, what is this mess? What did I write? I can barely read my own handwriting as it is, so struggling with that is enough. I don't want to have messy rows and boxes and everything else everywhere. But really, you can make your garden plan as simple or as complex as you like. Even if it's just a square representing your plot and you have potatoes on one side and onions on the other, that still helps you to know what it's going to be like, even if you don't measure it and draw it to scale or have it all plotted out scientifically. Having any kind of plan is good. The more accurate you can make it, the better. And having garden plans from previous years will help inform your decisions for future gardening. It's not a good idea to keep planting the same crop in the exact same spot from year to year. That can deplete the soil of its nutrients. So it's good to kind of mix it up and put different things in different places if you're using the same plot. Once you've got your plan, the next thing to do is to get the supplies. That's usually not too hard. Just bring your plan along with you. Make a supplies list and bring that and possibly a plan along with you to the store. If you've been budgeting, you'll probably already have this cut down. Or if you're ordering online, you can just do it from the comfort of your home. Think about the things you're going to need. Seeds are pretty easy to estimate. Fertilizer will be too. Usually it covers a pretty broad space. You can just follow the directions on the bag. Be sure to be careful about fertilizer. If you're growing things that you intend for yourself or others to eat, not all fertilizers are safe for fruit and vegetable crops. If you need any new supplies, you might want to get them repaired, cleaned up, or replaced. Think about twine, stakes, trellises, things that you're going to need to keep plants together, mulch, supplies like that are all things you want to add to your supply list. And if you have a good or more detailed plan, you'll be able to get that information before you even walk into the store. And then finally, the last step is to do any spring garden prep that you need to do. So pay attention to the last frost date. For our area here in Green Bay, it's usually late mid-May-ish, but it's Green Bay. If you're familiar with the area, you know what the weather likes to throw at us from year to year, and it's hard to predict, but pay attention to weather forecasts and online sources. You're also going to want, if you're going to be starting seeds inside in April, you might have already even started them. Starting those seeds, you can test older seeds to see if they germinate by putting them in a paper towel, moist paper towel in a dark spot, and seeing if they sprout a little bit to make sure they're still good. If you're getting new ones, you don't usually have to worry about that. If you need to do any prep work on your garden, make sure to get out there, and if you need to do any tilling or even any weeding, hopefully weeds aren't up for you right now. If you have supplies like tools and things like that, make sure they're close by to your garden. You don't want to have to go run a great distance to go grab them. Keep them in a nice place, make sure they're clean and ready to use for this year. If you've got any past garden plans, make sure to pay attention to those. And then hopefully when you get out to your site, everything will be good and easy to go. And finally, if you're going to have any family members or friends helping out with your garden, be sure to round them up now because they will make excuses later. So today we've talked about planning out your garden. Ooh. NWTC often has some fun drills going on over there. I assure you everything's okay. Today we talked about your garden plan, and that involves thinking about what you want to grow and making sure that you've got a good goal in mind. That involves thinking about your site and the site conditions that you've got to make sure that you're planting things that are going to be successful. And then that involves, if you're working in a budget, sticking with your budget and planning that out and drawing up a plan, which helps a lot with being able to budget and knowing your space, putting it all together, and hopefully putting on paper or even a computer program if you have the skill for that. And then finally, getting your supplies from the store, making sure you go on with a good list and idea of what you want so you're not just wandering around. And then finally, doing any prep work you need before your garden gets going for the season. So, if you have any tips at home, feel free to leave them in the comments. We'd love to hear what worked for your garden plans and what didn't, what you found to be really successful if you want to share, or if you just found something really interesting today. Feel free to let us know. Hopefully, no matter if you're a beginner gardener just planting a garden for the first time or an advanced gardener, I hope you learned something today joining us at Green Bay Botanical Garden. I hope to see you next time. Bye.